We are beautifully, melanated.
Welcome to the Beauty Melanated podcast. I am one of your hosts, Sarah, and I'm here with my co-hosts.
I'm Kay.
Hi, I'm Karen, and this week I'm going to introduce What in the World. Now, my topic is about Love Island. I don't watch it, actually. I've only ever seen, I think, half an episode once. My eldest daughter is quite a fan. And she said, "Oh, Mum, come sit with me. Let's watch this, let's watch Love Island." And with gritted teeth did I sit there and watch it, because it's just not something I like, if I'm honest. But I sat and I watched it. But what I want to talk about is whether we think it's diverse enough. Because I remember sitting there watching it and I said to her, there aren't that many people of colour on there. A couple of black guys. And I think there was one black girl on there. But interestingly, this season, viewers are praising them, saying how this is the most diverse series so far. So I just wanted to pick your brains, ladies, to see what you think about it. Is it diverse? I mean, I guess one of the things I thought of is that it felt as if they sort of, I don't know, it felt like they chose a token black female. That's how I felt. As if they have to have one, so they put someone in there, right? They do. I've noticed that they have more black men, but I find that they tend to pair off with white women. Now, you love who you love, and I'm not disputing that. However, I just don't know if it's... I have to choose my words very, very carefully, right? So, is it likely, given that statistically, white men are less likely to date out of their race? That's what the statistics say. Black men are likely to date within and outside of their race. So how likely is it that the black girl is going to end up winning? Now, like I say, I'm not a fan, and I've never really watched a whole episode, let alone a series. So I'm relying on you, ladies. If you watch it, can you tell me if a black couple or a black female has ever won? That's my first question.
Yes, Amber, she's mixed race. She's dad's black, mom's white, I think. So she won a couple of years ago. So by black, do you mean a dark-skinned African descent young woman?
See, this is another thing, right? So I'm just playing devil's advocate, okay? Mm-hmm. Right. I'm wondering if we also are playing to beauty standards with this as well. Because, yes, this person called Amber was of mixed parentage. Yes, she is black, if that's how she refers to herself. However, if I were to if I were talking about not necessarily dark skin, but a person who was not biracial, is there equal representation for that? Are they equally, I don't know, accepted on the show? I mean, even things like the fact that the Asian community is not very well represented. Now, that could be for lots and lots of different reasons. It could be because they don't want to come on. I don't know.
And they're also out for 6 weeks. Culturally, would it be acceptable for them to have their ass out for 6 weeks in thongs?
That's a good question. Absolutely. So there could be lots of reasons for that. However, they are not as represented on that show as other ethnicities. The other thing I was thinking about is it diverse in terms of body size? I don't know.
No. The only diversity might be the plastic surgeon who did the work. No, it's not diverse at all in terms of body image. There is one type, not a cellulite inside, not a big thigh inside. Now, the boobs are plastic in many cases, or little to none. All the stomachs are flat, every last one, like pancake. And everybody's lean and lithe and Eurocentric standards of beautiful. So no, there are no diverse body types. Absolutely not. And I do watch it.
And do you enjoy
it? I watch it. Do I enjoy it? It's it's my let's turn my brain off show. So I watch it purely because it makes me not think. If I had to take it too seriously, I think my brain would leak out of my eardrums. It is.
I mean, I call it trash TV. Yeah.
It is trash TV. That's why I watch it. I unwind with it.
But the thing is, the reason why I'm talking about it, I suppose, is because I have two girls, right? So my eldest daughter is a young woman now. And I just thought, what message really is this sending? Okay, so it's a bit of trash TV, and that's fine for you and me. We can take it in, not take it in. But I do think that lots of young people, quite impressionable young people, watch it. And I guess that's my concern. I'm just thinking, what is the message we're sending? Is it a healthy one? I just wanted to throw that out there, really.
No, a black couple has never won. The closest, I think, would have been India and Dami last year, and I was rooting for them, and they're a gorgeous couple, both very dark-skinned, gorgeous. And no, they came third. They didn't even get to come second. So I don't think that's going to happen. In terms of the cast, I wouldn't say this season is more diverse than any. You have your token dark-skinned black girl and your token mixed race, and boy and girl, and a black guy. And like you said, generally, we did an episode a few months ago when I talked about the statistics for that black women are the least popular demographic on dating sites. Also reflected in Love Island, because the black boys will also go for the white girls and talk about, oh, I love your eye color. It drives me insane. It's fucking eye color. What's wrong with brown eyes? Please. What do you love most about it? Oh, their eye color. Sit down and grow up. Eye color is not a personality trait. But they find themselves talking nonsense to justify why they will pie off a gorgeous black girl to go out with a stereotypical white girl. Oh, it's her eyes. It's her hair. That's why I can't take it seriously, because it's just trash. So, I like it because, when I watch that, my brain is shut off completely.
But the thing is, I wonder if we are feeding that beauty standard. Where did they get, where did these beauty standards come from? And are we not perpetuating them by watching these things and allowing that to continue? So I mean, so where are these people getting the notion that actually, to have blue eyes is more attractive than to have brown?
We know where that comes from.
But I'm saying, are we not feeding into that by watching these things?
Tiny Harris, that's what I'm going to say.
Say that again, Sarah?
Tiny Harris. T.I.'s wife.
Oh, yes.
T.I.'s wife, Tiny. I think she actually went to Nigeria, because they wouldn't do this procedure in America, and she got her eye colour changed to grey.
You're joking.
And she did. She wanted grey eyes. So she went and had surgery in her eyeballs and changed it to grey.
Could she not just wear contact?
Madness. Yeah, exactly.
She wanted to actually change, but she's the same person. She looks like she's wearing a baby's nappy because her BBWs just looks like it's slipped.
Oh yes, and Karen, she's very, very light skinned.
I do know who she is. I know who she is. Yeah, not know her obviously, but I've seen.
Didn't T.I. cheat on her constantly?
Of course he
kept taking him back.
So much for grey eyes. Yeah, exactly, she needs therapy. She can come into my room. Let's talk about that.
She's destroying, like Madonna. Oh my God. Madonna's another story though. Such a shame. She's so talented, and she's like making an absolute tit of herself recently.
Yep.
Love Island, Karen. I've watched it once, but I watched it Oh, probably about 3 years ago or something. And when I watched it, it was probably the same as it is now. I haven't watched it since then, but it was kind of one or two dark-skinned black men that are always muscular. And then there's one, normally like Hay says, a mixed race, light-skinned mixed race girl. And then there's a dark-skinned black girl, who kind of often has like a dodgy wig on or something. I feel like they don't make the best of her. Does that make sense? Like she could be a lot more beautiful. They kind of come with a wig on. That's not going to last you all that time, love. Best coat with braids or something that you can actually slick down the edges of. I don't know. It's just, yeah, they don't make right choices.
Right.
Sarah, the last 2 seasons, the wigs have been on point. I actually follow the wig maker on Twitter. It's incredible.
Oh, good.
Wow.
Well, thank God for that then, because about 3 years ago, Kay, it was
awful. Yes, it was. And I used to cringe going, oh, dear God, please.
It's just like
wear your hair natural.
Exactly. You're going to go for a date and it's going to look awful. So, yeah, it's just, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. The time I watched it once in my life. And I don't know. I just found them all so samey. And I also found that the men on the show, I feel they kind of objectified the men. And like Kay said as well, the men did end up, often going out with the white girls. But also I found the white girls would also kind of objectify these black guys as well, who kind of strut around. And I don't know. It just seemed like a big bit of a just trash, basically. It's absolute trash.
It's so popular.
It's so strictly, and I find that utterly boring, like watching a paint dry as well.
Yeah, I like Strictly.
I like Strictly.
No, Strictly. No, not interested in that either.
Are we going to talk about the square head mixed race guys? Because they always have a look. There is a look. Their heads are always square. What is going on? And some of them have very dodgy trims. You're like, your barber hates you. And he made sure the whole world knows it. Because, Lord. And the other thing I find that bothers me greatly is that the white men on Love Island cannot compliment a black woman and call her beautiful. They'll go for all the other terms, but it won't be beautiful.
For example, what might he say?
Oh, she's
exotic looking.
Feisty. She's feisty.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So that's a very veiled reference to the aggressive black woman. She's feisty, or she's sparkly, she's bubbly, she's energetic. Anything but beautiful.
Any black women that are kind of not argumentative on there? Because that show, what's that show? Married at First Sight. I saw that as well recently, and there was a darker skinned black lady they put on there, and she was feisty, but the thing is, she wasn't like fire. She wasn't confident. She was just outrightly rude and nasty to people, which was like, why would they put her on there? That's almost giving, I feel, black women a bad name. She was just so rude and nasty to people, spitting flames at them.
No, those aren't the black girls that appear on Love Island. I have to say they're not. Okay, they're generally really seriously educated, biochemists, that kind of level educated.
Yeah. Married at First Sight, none of that. So I think sometimes I worry that the media, the way they set it up, is just wrong. The wrong kind of people are on there.
But what you just said, though, Sarah, is really important, because you just said that the woman that you're talking about on the other show, you said that she sort of gave black people a bad name in the sense that however, though, but I think I'm hoping that people are more educated than to think that we are a monolith and therefore she must represent all of us, because that's just one person, isn't it?
I think people are not. I would have to say, Karen, yes, you hope they are, but I would say a lot of people are incredibly uneducated, and they tend to like these shows, and they would maybe think that.
Sarah, I'm going to have to counter as well, and I tell you why. Because I have seen white women humiliate themselves, screaming in shops, the Karens, raging at black people for existing.
Yikes.
Karen and I know we're not talking about ourselves, and they will absolutely lose their natural minds, and nobody ever calls them the angry white women.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And a black woman will put someone in their place and raise their voice, and suddenly we're dangerous and threatening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, angry black woman, yeah, we have reason to be angry, but we're not always angry. We're probably the most warm, gentle,
I agree.
fun-loving, open women on the planet.
Yep.
But when we get angry, everybody goes, oh, they're angry. Yet a woman can throw herself down like a toddler in a store at a black employee and get up and walk away with her drawers showing, and nobody thinks anything.
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh my God, I've seen them all.
That Primark. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the ones in America too, they literally are insane sometimes, and they don't get labeled as a general, as Karen said, as a monolith that white women are angry. They don't get labeled as that.
Mm.
It will be that white woman is angry, and that's that.
They don't get labelled, right? But they do get labelled as chavs. Chavs are definitely labelled in this country, a certain type
Fair.
of person. But
Fair.
yeah. But then again, though, chavs are like chav and proud, aren't they? Hashtag chav and proud and all that. So that's something else, though. That's another podcast. But yeah, Karen, what you did say about our young people that might be influenced by that is a concern, because of course they would be. It's really popular amongst young people, isn't it? So they may be influenced. Yes.
Yeah. And because my youngest has expressed a bit of an interest in wanting to watch it, but I wouldn't let her. She is, I don't think, old enough. She is coming up for 14, and I just think that the content is a little bit too
sexual.
Yeah, a bit too sexual, a bit too provocative, a little bit too just
I agree.
What I think is appropriate. And even for my eldest, she couldn't watch that until I felt she was old enough to watch it anyway. And it was really difficult because lots of her friends were watching it. So she wasn't sort of privy to cultural, popular culture, and couldn't join in conversations about it because I'd said, I don't think it's appropriate. And that's why I say it's very popular and it is quite influential. And I think she felt left out, that she couldn't join in, conversations about Love Island, what was going on and that sort of stuff. But that was my decision, and everyone's different, aren't they? Every household, I guess, every parent's different.
I agree, Karen. There is no sign of intelligent conversation on that island anyway. So all she would get is the object, as Sarah said, the objectification of the opposite sex. And some do have sex on TV anyway, so you can see when they're having sex. And there's a lot of loud kissing, which is just gross stuff.
Remember Geordie Shore? Do you remember that?
Yes.
That was epic. Now, I loved that.
Yes.
Absolutely. That was the biggest load of trash ever. I absolutely loved it. The original
I have
Geordie
never
Shore.
Ever watched that? Never.
They have sex like, wow,
That
they're not
was
even
like
trying to hide it.
Peeing the bed, this girl.
Yeah.
And she made millions, Charlotte, absolutely millions, by peeing the bed, getting so drunk and having loads of sex on TV.
Yeah.
That is shocking. Do you know, I must be a prude. I've not ever seen that.
That was crazy, that programme. Absolutely. And they were just falling over balcony. Oh, they were.
It was rough.
It. There was no black people in it, was there? It was just...
No, but it was very much British culture.
Yeah, it was.
Drink yourself into a stupor and
have sex.
Yeah.
Wet yourself.
Is that what you think? Do you think that a huge part of British culture then, Kay?
The drinking? Yeah.
Drinking and having sort of meaningless sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yes. There's usually too much blood in their alcohol stream. I've not seen drinking like this on this scale in Jamaica. No.
Like Geordie Shore. They're up north, weren't they, as well? So they're really going for it. Like Liverpool.
They do say that, though. They do say that in this country, people do tend to sort of binge drink, whereas on the continent, they might have, alcohol with their meal.
It's true.
They take their time. It's a completely different
Very
culture.
true, Karen.
Whereas here, we are just binge drinkers.
My family in Switzerland, they drink a lot, but they eat a lot too. So, and because it's warm, they eat out. Like they'll be eating outside and with family, and they'll all be sitting outside eating. My auntie in her garden, and then they'll be drinking, or we'll all go to a restaurant. But the meal might take 2 hours. They'll drink constantly, but they're eating as well, and it's all appreciated. It's not like trying to get food, alcohol back to get drunk. It's not about that.
Yeah.
Whereas here, when my children are going clubbing, it's pre-drinks on an empty stomach,
Yeah. I'm
So
both
you're
days.
tipsy before you go out.
Yeah.
So by the time you go out and you drink, you're blackout drunk.
Mm.
Yeah. And also, we tend to store it up for the weekend. So we tend to drink really heavily on a Friday and Saturday night.
Probably the weather.
As a nation,
Karen.
I'm saying. Pardon?
Mm.
It's probably the weather. I think it's the weather as well in this country. So weather has something to do with it, I think. Yeah. Because it's so cold here, unlike the continent where people are enjoying food and drink outside in a warm evening, talking and socializing and drinking and eating together. Here it's like, let's get the drink back as quickly as possible. Especially up north. If you go to like Glasgow and places like that and Wales, they'll drink even more heavily.
Wow.
So I'd
This
like
country
to know
makes
about,
me drink,
what's
but
that,
not
Kay?
because of the weather. I said this country makes me drink, but not because of the weather. The politics and the racism, yeah, it's hard to be sober.
See, I'd like to know in places like Finland and places like that that are so dark and cold a lot of the year. I'd like to know about their alcohol consumption rate.
Mhm.
I think in somewhere like Poland, I was reading about.
Oh, they drink a lot.
They seem to have quite a problem. Well, not a problem, but yeah.
My Polish neighbour,
alcoholism is a
the
problem.
amount
Yeah.
of recycling in the recycling bags, amount of beers in that recycling bags.
So do the Polish people in England drink more, or is it that as a nation Poles enjoy alcohol too?
Good point.
I think in Poland they also do drink a lot. I think
Russia's the same. I had a Russian friend, Susanna, and she used to, back when I was in college, and she used to talk about the family drinking a lot. Yeah.
Do you know, this could be another podcast, ladies.
It could be,
Talking about alcohol use and misuse. Anyway, so on to today's topic. So I'm going to continue with the children's mental health series, and we're going to continue talking about teenage and adolescents mental health. So as I said a couple of weeks ago, I work in a school. I see a lot of young people who are experiencing difficulties with anxiety, low mood, depression. Lots of children are medicated. And actually, for me, that's a real concern. I feel like we are heavily medicating our young people. I'm not saying it's not necessary in some cases. I'm sure it is. But just the levels of young people who seem to be medicated for lots of different things, for the treatment of anxiety, for the treatment of low mood, for lack of sleep. So some students are unable to sleep and they're medicated for that. Children, we're talking about, I work in a secondary school. So children as young as, say, 11, who are in, year 7 at school. So that is something that I find quite alarming. And adding to that, I did a course today on suicide in children and adolescents. That was really heavy going. And the statistics are quite shocking. The numbers are quite high and rising. And so I wanted to talk to you ladies, really, sort of pick your brains and see what you think is causing that number to rise, and what we can do to, I guess, support young people with their mental health, to prevent, escalation of poor mental health with the children that we work with. What do you think? I'll go to Sarah first.
It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one, Karen, because I think resilience, like we speak about so much, it is something to kind of bear in mind, and how some families do not have much resilience, so therefore don't teach their children much resilience. So I think that's the main thing that I would think about when think about this topic. I'm also aware that we are as a nation are more aware, well, the whole world is really now, of children committing suicide. They were always committing suicide. We just now are more aware of it.
Do you think this? Do you don't think it's the numbers are rising then, even though statistics would say otherwise?
Not sure. Yes, the numbers. Yes, it's shocking what's happening, and we're all being made aware of children that are taking their lives. I mean, I guess you could argue that, I mean, it goes back to resilience again, and people saying, kind of, I want to kill myself because my boyfriend's friend doesn't like my dress or my hair or something, or I want to kill myself because this relationship's ended. That kind of stuff. And teenagers often can be quite flippant about even saying stuff like that, like I want to kill myself. That's, that's now said and people don't really bat an eyelid, whereas maybe 10 years ago, people have been like, oh my gosh, do you really mean that? So I guess there's resilience. And then there's always also us being more aware. It's like mental health now. People say mental health the worst it's ever been. Well, I don't know if it is, because it's always been difficult. I'd say I feel pretty much everybody has mental health issues. I've not ever met anyone in my entire life that does not have an issue. So it's just different variety of issues people have and how they deal with them. So yeah, I don't know if it's getting that much worse. I think self-harm has escalated, Karen, definitely. Suicide, I mean, look, you could argue maybe that COVID and lockdown influenced that. But I'm not quite sure. Not quite sure, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. I'd be more interested to see what you ladies have to say about it. Maybe I can form a better opinion about it.
Well,
I'll
just add to what you said. So certainly in the school I'm working, we are having to expand our pastoral team. So whereas before you might have had, someone in student services, or you might have heads of houses or whatever it is, pastoral teachers who taught but also had pastoral duties, we are having to expand that team because we just cannot manage comfortably the amount of complaints that we have. So the difficulties range from students who perhaps their parents are immigrants. This is an example. Parents are immigrants to the country. They have really high expectations for the children. They want them to get really good grades. And when I say really good grades, they mean A's and up, because you can have an A star and a 9 now, can't you? They are really, really worried about failing their exams. They feel they won't get into the universities that they want to get into. And that could be coupled with other things that are going on at home. So
you say that wasn't happening before, but all that was happening before. That's been happening.
Right, so this is one example. This is one example. I agree with you. I think this is happening before. I don't think this is new. But what I think is new is that on top of those sorts of things that we've always seen, I think anxiety is to me, the level of anxiety that children are experiencing, to the point that they are not able to attend school, for example. The amount of school refusal we've got now is higher than ever. I
agree. Karen, I agree with all those kind of things, but I think it's all to do with families. It's all to do with the families, because there is no real reason, I feel, why, okay, I'll backtrack now. The people I work with, they have reason that they can't go to school. Because I work with a lot of looked after children. They have reason that they find school really tough to physically get in there. But most kids can go to school, whether school's healthy for them, whether it's the right place for them, and whether school deal with it properly is another issue altogether. But yeah, I think, Karen, it's more kind of known now that people are hurting themselves. It's more known that people may want to take their life. And often when you talk to these kids, often they don't want to take their life. Often, some do, but often they just want to break from what their life is. They want to break from their own head, but they don't actually want to kill themselves. So often I find that they don't have suicidal ideation, but they're in a time where they just can't cope. So yeah, I know I'll let Kay chip in and see what she has to say, because it's a hard one. Yeah, it's a difficult one.
Ladies, while you were talking, I was reaching for theory because it helps. It helps me anyway. I'll come to it in a minute. Karen, I don't feel alarmed by how many of our children are medicated purely because it reflects society. But I am alarmed at the amount of children that are medicated without therapy or without any therapeutic intervention. I don't think a child should ever be medicated without also have therapy provided for them, because the medication will only ever mask the symptoms. It won't address what was going on for the child in the first place. Outside of ADHD, where it does really help, my daughter has ADHD and has been medicated, anything else can be resolved through also therapy, psychotherapy, counseling, therapeutic interventions of any kind. And that's where I feel our children are let down. And suicidal thoughts don't have a container. There is no, there's no context. You might feel, some children do experience depression, let's face it. And without any support, they're expected to navigate depression with the pressures of school, the pressures of peer and social relationships. And sometimes death might actually feel like a nice little out. That's why they need therapy, so that it can be contextualized as part of growing up.
Absolutely.
So that's where my frustration is with current society.
With regard to what you just said, though, Kay, the thing is they do need therapy, but in our local area anyway, CAMS is fit for bursting. And so they just don't have the capacity to deal with, every case as we would like them to. And so lots of children fall through the cracks, don't they?
But not every child needs CAMS. CAMS is child and adolescent mental health services. Exactly, because right now it's not fit for purpose.
No.
But not every child needs psychiatric intervention. So CAMS doesn't even really provide long-term open-ended therapy in the way Sarah and I would if we had private clients, for instance. Do you see what I mean? Or if there's a school counselor to whom they can go. If it gets to CAMS, it's already a crisis problem. I'm talking before that.
But I completely agree. And there are services, but what I'm finding is, let's just say, for example, you've got, let's just say that the young person I was talking about, right? So that's my example. This young person, parents are really, really pushy, wanted to do really, really well. She's stressed out with exams. Yes, I could refer her to, say, the emotional wellbeing team who operate in Kent, and she can be seen for low-level anxiety. I could do some work with parents, blah, blah. If we step that up, then let's just say another example. I don't know, child experiencing domestic violence at home. It's stopped now, but they are still, experiencing the sort of, I don't know, the repercussions of that. They are self-harming. That wouldn't even meet CAMS. But
Karen, you're on mute.
Keeps muting, sorry.
Okay.
I don't know what you heard last.
We got to the but.
For someone like, let's just say, someone who's experienced domestic violence at home, for example, social services have been involved. They're not experiencing domestic violence anymore, but they are still traumatized by the experience, right? And they're self-harming, let's just say. So there are other therapeutic services out there, but they are limited. And to get to speak to someone like yourself or to Sarah would cost. It's not free. It's all about families who can't afford it.
But it shouldn't be limited. And this is where the government is failing its children. Why is it limited?
That's my point. That's what I'm saying. Whereas CAMS is a free service, isn't it? It's part of the NHS. What I'm saying is therapists such as yourselves would cost. And many, many families can't afford it.
Yeah, right. I agree. And that's the broken system we live in. So then when the child has to carry all of that on their own, you can see why during that really critical time of development, that death as an out is on the table. All options are on the table. I'll self-harm. And if that doesn't meet the need, then death might be an option. It's, let me go to the theory. I think this will help. So I'm reading from The Adolescent Psyche, Richard Frankl, Jungian and Winnicottian perspective. So we're talking really psychoanalytical perspective and understanding of teenage years and what happens to children when they are shifting. The overall agreement is that it's a period of separation and isolation. So depending on your first experience of separation, this is going to be repeated in adolescence. So I'm going to read even a little bit. Anna Freud, who is the daughter of Freud, argues that essentially adolescence is repeating primary relationship to early love objects, i.e., primary relationship to your parents. This period of life can be characterized as an intensely psychological time. Psychological moments occur when the world becomes unified, where relationships take hold, and where things fall together. Adolescence must be filled to capacity with such moments, intense connections and equally intense separations that seem to take place daily, moment by moment. The despair and breakup of a steady relationship can be followed by the delight of a new, seemingly eternal love. I remember those days. Mm-hmm. Violent, murderous rage directed towards an anxious parent is often replaced by rapid hugs and affection, which can confuse a parent further. So literally, it's an experiential enactment of separateness and connectedness. They're learning to be separate from their parents and discover who they are. But it does mean letting go of the childhood privilege of, you don't have to think about anything because mom and dad will do it. So it's a tricky time for them. And just another bit, with the onset of adolescence, the familiar taken for granted feeling of belonging shifts. For the first time in life, one encounters at an existential level what it means to be alone. In this sense, during a moment of feeling separated, an adolescent is thrown back on herself, forced to confront who she is as an individual on her own. And same for boys, it's generic here. Yeah. So that's what adolescents are grappling with theoretically. Huge brain development happens around that time as well. Absolutely. So I'm looking at the chapter, Life and Death Imagery in Adolescence. So does that kind of shed any new thinking or any new understanding maybe?
It is helpful. That is definitely helpful to know that they are definitely going through a transitional period. Their brains are developing. They are coming away from their parents as they perhaps were in primary, where a lot of their ideas were formulated by their parents. And now they're more influenced by their peers, etc. So, yeah, I completely agree with everything that you said. I just also agree with what Sarah said when she said that our children seem to lack resilience. It is uncomfortable sitting in discomfort, right? So students that I work with just find it really difficult when things don't go their way or when things don't feel nice. They have a fallout with a friend or, they're feeling anxious or worried. To me, this generation seems to not be able to cope with really day-to-day normal things.
You see, that's Karen. It's just like fallouts with friends. My daughter talks about that. I will put her straight. Any kind of messing around about that, I'll put her straight. This is just, is this really important to you? I mean, she doesn't really fall out with her friends much, but occasionally, is this really deeply important to you?
But it becomes more difficult as they get older, though. So when you get to sort of secondary age, a fallout with a friendship, because what I do see is that sometimes kids can be ostracized. And it seems what seems trivial to us as adults is not trivial to them when you're like, I don't know, 15, 16. It's like...
You know what, Karen? I never had that, though, at school. I had disagreements with friends. Of course I did. But it didn't get to me. I just thought, jog on.
But
I'll just
the
stick
thing,
to my
but
own
you have the thing is you have resilience. You are obviously quite a confident person, and we didn't have the internet. What I'm finding is that with
Good
the
point.
internet,
Yeah,
people
good
are
point.
sharing these things. You go home,
Yep.
the bullying
Good
continues.
point.
How many likes, how many this, and who's
Yep.
popular and who's not. And then people share things like self-harm. There
Very
are
true.
self-harm groups. People
Yep.
say, you haven't cut as deeply as I have.
Yep.
It's
Right.
There's
shocking.
disordered eating groups as well. How
There's
to
Yes.
starve
disordered eating.
yourself.
I'm telling you, it's
Mhm.
rife out there for them right now. Things like and it's more likely, according to this course, it's more likely that if a child has been exposed to someone else who's attempted suicide, they are more likely to try it themselves. I've got students who, will write notes to each other about their suicidal thoughts and ideation, share those things. And then before you know it, someone's attempted this. To me, this is scary. And I do think it's different. I think it has definitely escalated in recent years, I would say.
I agree, Karen. There's a challenge on TikTok, the blackout challenge, where you tie a rope around your neck and you asphyxiate yourself until you black out.
Wow.
What kind of foolishness is this?
Ridiculous.
Absolutely. What kind of foolishness? Absolutely.
Like, seriously? So nobody not afraid of dead? Because if that was my child, let me not say this on air, put what around your neck?
That's what I'm
Right,
saying,
okay.
though. That's what I'm saying. I find a lot of the time with the kids I've worked with, a lot of the time it is a certain type of child. It might be a
Vulnerable?
child comes from a certain, to do that. Okay, we all get mental health issues. People go through a lot of stuff in life, a lot of challenges, depression, suicide, etc., self-harm. But people that do those challenges, that the Momo one, Blue Whale, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Often it's a certain type of young person that kind of that will do this stuff. But then also we have to think about boys, because that's different. Well, I think we've been talking a lot about girls. If you talk about boys are a lot more prone to kind of do things like shove something around their neck, I feel, because they don't open up as much, because boys are very introverted with their feelings and emotions. And I know we did our whole series on men. That's why I think when it comes to something like a suicide challenge, it comes to boys, whoa, we've got a problem. And we really need to look after our boys. That's what I feel.
Because I think research suggests, doesn't it, that boys tend to act out, so that their presentations are much more aggressive, perhaps. They present with more challenging behavior, whereas girls tend to internalize their feelings a lot more.
Yeah.
So they do present differently, and you're right. I guess for boys,
suicide for young men has definitely gone up massively.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Because of said, let's keep our feelings in, but they would have learned that from somewhere. So we go back again to the beginning.
Yeah, right.
Parenting young men to believe they can't have feelings,
right?
That they can express safely. The very extreme acting out, i.e., let's try a blackout challenge, let's try a challenge, just pop a pill that someone gave us, without even interrogating what it is. It comes from somewhere, and it's a societal problem as well, because that myth, as we heard from the men we spoke with, is definitely perpetuated from before they were 10 years old.
Definitely.
So that's got to change.
Definitely. I was speaking to a man actually the other day, and I was asking him, I said, look, on our podcast, we discussed, I think it was one of our guests, Kay, that said he went to the pub or something with a friend, and both people were struggling, but neither man would even ever admit what they were struggling with. Both just drank to oblivion and said nothing.
That's it. Samir. That was Samir. Yeah.
Samir, yes.
Yeah.
And I spoke to a man. He said to me, he said, very rarely will us men actually speak about something that's bothering us. And I said, wouldn't you want to speak about something that's bothering you? And they said, oh no. They said that would be awful. That'd be even worse if we were to speak about it. I thought, wow.
It would be worse to speak about it.
To speak about it would make it worse.
Right.
So.
Oh my.
Yeah. So.
Oh my.
I think when it comes to our young men, our teenage young men, I feel they are more reactive when it comes to challenges, suicidal challenges. Sure, there's girls that do it out there, aren't there? But yeah, But then we also think about men and the way boys and the way they self-harm is different often the way girls self-harm. So
Say some more, Sarah.
Yeah,
On
I'm
boys
interested
and
to hear a
self-harm.
bit more about that. Yeah, I'd like to know a bit more about that.
I guess in my experience working with young men, I'd find that they would go out. It's interesting because they're more outwardly, like you said. I mean, there are the young men obviously in life that I kind of have, worked with and stuff that may have tried to put things around their necks and things like that. But I find a lot of young men, the way that they would self-harm is maybe picking a fight with somebody. So they might try and pick a fight with somebody that's stronger than them, bigger than them, and a better fighter than them, knowing that. And by doing that, they know they're going to hurt themselves. Or loads of young men actually that I've worked with will punch walls, smash their bedroom through, kick holes in doors, smash, kick those really kind of walls you can kick through.
Yeah, like the MDF walls.
Yeah, kick walls, smash stuff up. But that would always end up with them having kind of bloody knuckles and stuff like that. So where people might just say, oh, yeah, I don't know, think of a dummy name, Johnny's a violent so-and-so. Well, actually, yeah, he is violent, but why is he doing that, though? Because he wasn't born smashing through doors.
Absolutely, that's right.
So,
yeah. And
if Johnny keeps on smashing through doors, then Johnny is hurting himself and then he carries on doing it. Then, then to me, then that's self-harm.
Yeah. From my work, it's risk-taking behavior with young men.
That's what we would call it.
They'll put themselves in dangerous situations where they may or may not die. Or they'll be out late at night where it's just not safe to be out, jump across train tracks.
That's right.
Take drugs.
Yeah.
That kind of risky behavior that may go one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's I was at a training course the other day, and the person giving the training course was saying that they were working with an individual that it liked to play chicken, across the road. And then when they spoke to the individual just said they wanted to see if they were invincible.
All right.
Which is why they played chicken.
Right. I do have to say, I do hate to see groups of young boys on bicycles weaving in and out of traffic. It grinds my gears.
Absolutely.
It's dangerous 100%. For us drivers.
Yeah. 100%. And I find a lot of that in the local area where they're either on those stupid moped things or they're... It's irritating to say the least, but dangerous. Really.
It is dangerous. Yeah. And if they get clouted...
We've got to watch out for them because the girls might be doing different things. That the self-harm the girls will do gets our attention more. The risk-taking behaviour and destructive self-harm stuff boys do doesn't get right because people, it's a boy. He's gonna
boys will be boys.
Yeah, boys are fighting again. Boys will be boys.
It's slightly different though because I think risk-taking is one thing, but when you see girls deliberately taking it, an implement to sort of, to cut themselves, and leaving scars down their arms, legs, stomachs, or, that, I think that's really difficult to see. I think that they're quite different presentations, aren't they?
They're different. But there's also people that like to self-harm outwardly. I've forgotten the therapeutic term. And there's self-harmers that are, like I was in Sainsbury's the other day and I saw a girl that cut her face up here and had gouged into her neck and she was bleeding and her mum was walking with her. And you could see all over her arms were just gouges and scars, like she'd just gone at herself with I don't know what with. But the fact she was walking through Tesco's like, oh, do you want some meat, mum? With the blood dripping off her face. It's just you'll have those kind of self-harmers and then ones that will hide it on their thighs or,
That's true. That's true. Some people... For some people, it's a cry for help. For some people, it's more, I guess, a coping mechanism for them.
Coping.
And therefore, it's not.
Cope.
Yeah.
In our culture, in our community, would we say it's equally prevalent among Black girls?
Interestingly, I have to say, yes. Okay. Actually, yeah. And I was surprised because I thought it might affect one culture more so than another. But I have to say, I think it's right across the board. It is quite equal.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think if the place you work in is predominantly black, I think then you'd have a more of an idea, because the place I worked in last time wasn't predominantly black, and I maybe have seen 1 or 2 black girls in the whole time I was there that self-harmed. The rest were white.
Right.
That self-harmed. But that's just probably the demographic of the place I was working at. It wasn't really fair, I guess.
Yeah, I would say in my experience, let's just say it's 50-50 in terms of diversity. I would say it's across the board.
Right.
And what I'm finding is that different parents deal with it very differently, is what I would say. So sometimes it's just different parents, but sometimes there is a cultural element to that as well. Well, I've spoken to some parents who are from sort of West African countries where it is so alien to them, because they're thinking growing up, they went through a lot more adversity than what their children are experiencing as far as they're concerned, right? They're saying, I had to wake up at this time. I did this. We didn't have this. We didn't have, and yet we were happy, healthy. I can't understand why my child would take to doing something as just self-destructive as this. And they equally have, families who are English, white English, who equally struggle because they don't understand why their child, who seemingly has everything as far as they're concerned, would take to doing this. So, that's something that I think they all have in common. I think it's just really hard for parents to get their head around it. But
It's communication. I mean, yes, people will. Of course, people will be drawn to self-harm. But I think to stop it escalating to a coping mechanism for life is communication with your kids.
Yes.
That's it.
See, I find that lots of children who self-harm, not all of them, but a high number have really poor relationships with parents. So like you said, if communication or relationships are severed, they're more likely to.
That's right. Loads of people, I think pretty much every single person in the time I've done my job that's self-harmed consistently, not someone that's had an episode, because plenty of us have had an episode of it. But I'm talking, people that consistently self-harm all the time.
Yeah.
Those types, I'd say pretty much always have an issue with their parents, and not just a teenager trying defiance stuff. I'm talking about I feel like the young person rightly so has an issue. When you know about the family and the mum and dad, and you can understand why a young person has an issue, and they're not being supported at home, really.
I agree.
Yeah. And their emotional needs are consistently unmet and remain unmet.
All the time. And they remain unmet all the time. And often I find parents may know that the child has an unmet need, but still choose not to meet it.
And that is really interesting, because there's someone else I'm thinking of, and they have difficulties with food, right? So they've been to the eating disorder service. The issues are around mum and needs not being met.
Often,
but then whose job is it really to work with parents? I know we've got early help, and I know we've got social services and things like that. But even then, I just think these services are, pardon?
It's not going to help. It's not going to. Early help, as a lot of parents to me call it no help.
Yeah,
it's not going to help you. It's not going to help change a deep problem within a family. Intergenerational trauma is not going to help.
Exactly. And then what do we do? That's what I'm saying. So I think with all the services that we've got, I think we're still struggling to reach those parents. And ultimately, it's the parents that have to make the changes.
That's right. At home, that's where it starts. With young. Talk to your children when they're young, because I know, we all know, even my daughter now, who's coming up to 10, she's even starting to be a little bit like, kind of,
Yeah.
Pull her up on it, hang on a second. Actually quite rude. But, it's starting already, But you have to communicate with them, don't you? There are going to be times they're not going to want to talk to you. You still want to communicate at some point. When they are hurting, at least they know they can come to you, and they're annoyed by you. They know you're there for them, got your back.
The other thing I find, though, is that some parents find it really difficult to parent for fear of their children's self-harm or for fear of their children's attempts at suicide or, threats to suicide. So I find that some young people present with really challenging behavior, are defiant, fail to follow any instructions, and parents just do not know what to do.
That's from parents, though, Karen. I've not met any kids like that have not had issues at home with their parents. There's a more, like you're talking about, really defiant, never listening, all this kind of stuff. If they're consistently like that, then there's a problem at home. Because obviously teenagers, they're going to be like that a bit. But if they're always like that, all the people I've worked with have had issues with at home. Normally they've got issue with mum or, dad's, I can't stereotype, but there's been an issue at home, I think, for that consistency of that kind of behaviour. Constant defiance, anger, all the time. That's not normal.
The thing is, though, I've kind of seen quite a lot of, even when the difficulties at home are, you wouldn't necessarily, I mean, because like I say, I do lots of assessments, right? So I meet with parents, I try to unpick the difficulty, try and find, the root of it. But even when it's not extreme, okay, there obviously are things going on at home. I have things like maybe parents are doctors and they work in the city. So children don't see them very much. Now, to that child, that could be a real problem. And yes, you'd want to address it, and maybe, mum and dad need to cut down their hours or whatever. But I'm saying, years ago, would that have been a reason for a child to have presented the way that they are now? That's what I'm saying. I just think there's a difference, because even something that I don't think would constitute having suicidal thoughts can, because for children nowadays, I just think that where they're not as resilient, everybody's got problems at home, so not everyone, but you know what I mean? That we do have problems, don't we? Problems come, we resolve them, we move on. There's another
that's
problem.
Why in life,
life.
No one gets through this thing called life without certain trauma, unfortunately.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be anything extreme that families are going through for children to still present in this way. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what.
When you say years ago, Karen, are you talking about when we were growing up or generation before?
I guess I'm thinking of when I was growing up. I suppose that's what I'm referring to, perhaps.
When I went to Jamaica earlier this year with my daughter, she said, what an eye-opener, because her cousins are completely different to her. They take things in their stride. They expect difficulty. They expect that there will be some way of overcoming it, and they move.
That's interesting, yeah.
And it's true. And I think it's because as a society, we don't pretend that our children won't have difficulties.
Yeah, I agree.
They know there will be difficulties.
Yeah,
they see us overcome it, and probably something not talked about enough either is death. So in our culture, death is so real and a grounded experience. Open coffins, screaming, wailing, crying. That if a child says they want to die, they know exactly what it means. There is no fantasy about what might happen when you die, and there's no respawning. Because they're watching that coffin being lowered and the grave covered over. So death is a real concrete experience, and they know it happens. Whereas this society doesn't do death. They don't talk about it enough. They don't talk about this. That is also part of the life cycle, actually, and it's okay to grieve and move and heal. It's completely different. I do think it's a society.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think our children are very sheltered. I think that I do a lot of work with parents where parents find it so difficult for their children to be in any discomfort. So they'll call up and say, my child is really struggling. They can't put their hand up in class. And I think you've got to teach them to be resilient. You've got to tell them, actually, they've got this. They'll be fine. You've got to teach them independence. And I think we're failing our children, by not doing this.
You'll have mums I've met in the past call up and say, oh, I was bullied. So, I think my daughter's being bullied. And it's like you talk to the daughter and the daughter isn't being bullied. The daughter's having a little bit of time with peer issues, a bit like,
Right.
you like me, I don't like you anymore, that kind of stuff. But they're not being bullied. But the mum's saying, oh, I was bullied. This is bullying. And that is really toxic and dangerous to that kid. You know, it's making it into something it's not. We need to let our kids know they're going to have issues with friendships. They're going to just fall out with their friends. You're not going to have the same boyfriend or you met when you were 15. You may do occasionally. Some
Please
people
God,
do.
you don't.
But you know, do you really want the same boyfriend you met when you were 15? Most people say no. Or girlfriend.
Or girlfriend, exactly. No.
It's normal to have your heart broken by somebody before you're 20. You know, this is normal.
Yes.
You're not going to die. It's normal. I also find a lot of things like talking to teenagers about intrusive thoughts, you know, kind of normalizing, a bit like Kay said, psychoeducation. So they stop thinking that just because they, you know, aren't feeling hysterically happy every day, that they've failed somehow in life. When actually, if they were hysterically happy every day, I think they were manic. So
absolutely.
You know,
or over medicated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So normal.
Yeah. And it's normal to be anxious. It's normal to feel these things. It's normal to be sad. It's normal. It's almost as if we want to take away every emotion from our children except happiness. They've just got to be like a happy pill all the time. That's just that's not realistic, is it? So
no.
And as I read earlier, it is also very developmentally appropriate that teenagers do teenage stuff, i.e., they're going to wrestle with separation and they're going to wrestle with connectedness. They're going to wrestle with leaving parents, forming a new identity, and they're going to wrestle with who am I? We can't rescue them from that.
No,
they can't. Need to.
They must do it.
That's why our species survives, isn't it? The teenagers, you know, even with mammals, they leave the parent, don't they, in order to set up their own family. Otherwise, we would have died out.
Exactly. So, Karen, would you, and Sarah as well, and I will later on as well, I know we're nearly wrapping up, what would you suggest? So we've talked about the issue. Now let's talk about ways to work with. You're a parent and your child says, I have suicidal thoughts. I want to die. What do you say?
Well, for me, I think I've said more than once on this podcast that my youngest had a difficult time through lockdown. And we talked about a lot of things. We worked through it. I believe in resilience. I do not allude my children to thinking that they will not go through adversity, that, you know, that there'll be sunny days every day. My children are fully aware. They've seen me firefight throughout most of my adult life. So my children are under no disillusions whatsoever. It's really, I think what I've taken away from today, what I will change in my practice is I will think about ways in which I can help other parents build resilience in their children. So I'm thinking about running workshops for parents around resilience building. All right. So this is something that I practice daily in my home, but I need to get that out there so that other parents can also be a little bit more clued up and will have the strategies to help, you know, support their children. So that's my
really good.
That's my thought.
That's really good. My only thing is what I've already said is about communication, and I'll just bleat on, say it again. You know, communication, and not just communication. Suddenly now they're a teenager. There needs to be communication from when they're little, and kind of like Karen said, building resilience and kind of normalizing, like we would all do, all three of us, kind of normalizing the everyday stuff, normalizing anxiety, normalizing, you know, intrusive thoughts. Like I think I saw something on Instagram about somebody that works with pregnant women, which is also another kind of passion of mine, working with people that have just had a baby or are pregnant and are stressed, because that, you know, that's in itself, I think, is really important work. And the amount of, you know, young mothers that have intrusive thoughts, and this doctor was kind of normalizing it, saying, you know, obviously it's different if someone wants to act them out, but, you know, what happens if I drop the baby now? That kind of stuff. And they get themselves into a horrible headspace thinking they're a terrible person when they would never drop their baby, you know, but it's an intrusive thought. So I think psychoeducation and normalizing it Karen, was what I would say is my kind of 2 pence on it, because it gives people so much relief to understand that most people at some point feel like this. They're not the only person, and there's so many other ways to support and help them. They're not alone out there. Lots of people feel like this.
Absolutely. A good point.
Lovely. So for me, I'm going to summarize theory and practice in one. I'm going to try. Images of death and loss accompany all fundamental transitions in life. So that's your baseline. As my child becomes an adolescent even, images of death and loss will accompany that transition because, they're leaving a part of themselves behind, and some might feel like that part of themselves is dying. So when a child expresses suicidal thoughts or ideation, it might help to say, it sounds like a part of you wants to die, rather than all of you wants to die. But a part of you might feel like it's dying too. So talk to parts of self. I think I mentioned this a few podcast episodes ago that, when we look at parts of ourselves, the child we were, the toddler, the teenager, we realize that we don't morph into an adult that forgets all those experiences. So at times those parts of ourselves can be activated. And it may feel like death is, metaphorical death rather than literal death. Metaphorically, something is dying inside me. Yes, a part of you is no longer a child, and you might want to grieve for that. So separate the feelings and the thoughts if you can. Obviously, if it's a more serious, there's a plan of action, you must get that child to A&E and get some help immediately. But if you're doing the communication, as Sarah's saying, you're able to hold those conversations. Let's think about death and dying. What does it mean? I'm going to close with a lovely little quote that I like, actually. It says, what is close and important to the child grows more and more distant to the emerging youth. The child, as a place of experience, dies away. What cannot be forgotten by the child cannot be remembered by the youth. Bit profound, but it's basically saying that experience of being a child dies away when you hit puberty and adolescence. You can no longer go back to your childlike ways of being.
Yeah.
So allow your child to transition well, and support them through it, even if it gets dark.
Yeah. And help build resilience. I think
absolutely.
Be honest with them.
It will pass.
Life can be challenging at times, but you know what? I've got you. I've got your back. I even tell my daughter that. At times life can be difficult. You know what? Mummy's got you, and I'll always be there to support you.
Yes. That's it. That's it.
She needs to know. So when she becomes a teenager, I don't want to talk to me, whatever. That's fine. She still knows I've got her back.
Exactly. And also, as part of you, that is a part of you is being born, which is also lovely.
That's right. That's right. Well, that was a lovely note to end on. Thank you, ladies. As always, a pleasure. So if anyone has any thoughts on what we've talked about today and would like to email us, you can do so at beautifullymelanatedpodcast@gmail.com.
Woohoo! Hey! Well done, Karen. Did we want to say a word about what's coming up for the podcast?
Could do. Go on then.
No, you do. This was your doing. I want you to take all the credit.
Oh, please.
What are we doing next week, Karen? What are we doing next week?
Right. So next week we are moving to Lightning FM. We will be broadcasting live from a radio station. How exciting. Our intention is to continue with the podcast on Spotify or however you access the podcast. But it will be also aired on Lightning FM. So I will find out what the frequency is for that and I'll let everyone know. I don't know what it is yet. But very exciting news.
Very, very exciting. And it's live, so you can call in as well, right?
That's right. So we'll be giving out numbers and everything. Yep.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Brilliant.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
All
Bye
right.
for now.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.
We are beautifully.